So we've now spent an hour focusing on the fact that somehow we as a country appear to be stuck with two major party candidates that most Americans dislike strongly. But how much of this is the politicized media to blame for amplifying and in some cases creating these sort of political villains that have brought us to where we are today? Now, the story of, let's say, Hunter Biden's business relationships and taxes and former president's behavior leading up to on January 6th are legitimate stories that deserve coverage. But in many ways, these become politicized media obsessions, sometimes designed to score political points. It happens on both sides. I'm not saying it's always equal. But take, for example, any given day on Fox News, you will hear this.
It's constant humiliation for the president himself and a total embarrassment for the United States.
I mean, I think he's the dumbest president we've ever had. Joe Biden's a liar.
This Biden is a disaster.
Watching Fox News, one gets the impression that Joe Biden has never, ever done anything beneficial for the country, including before he moved into the White House. And of course, left-leaning media rode the Trump administration to record ratings and revenue, and it's not because MSNBC and CNN were praising Trump.
What the president did today was just flat out gross and disgusting.
The more racist Donald Trump is, the more energetically his voters will return to the polls.
How low can he go?
He's a fascist. He encourages violence.
Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century.
Political media, or more to the point, opinion programming on cable news, is designed to make political hits. And yes, the politicians themselves play a role, but it's the political media that's painting the other in the least favorable light. And as a result, we're more bitterly at each other's throats than ever before. But just as important, it may also force us into a situation where the right-leaning media is pushing for Biden or even Hillary Clinton, who they can then torch, and the left-leaning media discuss and cover Donald Trump nonstop. And alas, we have Biden versus Trump in 2024. Joining us now is Associate Professor at the American University School of Communications, Jane Hall. Professor, thanks very much for coming on the show. Is it an unfair question to ask whether the Biden versus Trump match is good for business in the politicized media?
It's not a bad question to ask. It is probably good for media, at least on one side of the equation. Fox News would love to have the ability to just keep beating up and saying that Joe Biden's at death's door, and he keeps handing them gaffes. I will say also that I think the so-called mainstream media have also been as tough on Biden as they were on Trump, and those two are not equal, in my opinion.
When you say the mainstream media, I mean, I don't want to get into the because I don't have the statistics in front of me. I can tell you from owning the website Mediaite, which covers these things, I would be surprised if that were true, that the mainstream media has been as tough on Biden as they have on Trump. But there's no doubt.
In the early months, there's some research that shows that they were.
Yeah.
I think that friends of mine in journalism were eager to prove their independence, eager to prove that they weren't in the pocket of the Democrats. And, I don't think that the coverage in the Washington Post or the New York Times is in any way as destructive to our political discourse as cable news. Cable news is really the villain on this.
And I
say this as somebody who's been on all three cable networks.
No, look, I agree with you to some degree on that. But if you're going to tell me the New York Times and the Washington Post have been harder or as hard on Joe Biden as they've been on Donald Trump, that simply can't be the case.
Well, in the first few months, there's some research, and in the first few months.
I don't believe it. Anyway.
Okay, well, you cannot believe it, but I think they were out to prove their independence and that they are not liberal. I think that is a subtext on a lot of news media that doesn't get talked about. So I really do.
But let's talk about the politicized media, the cable news specifically, because you're saying that you see them as the villains. I think you're absolutely right that Fox News would like nothing more than a Biden. Maybe the only thing they'd like better than Biden is Hillary Clinton to run. Because as I just did in a previous segment, the only people who are really talking about Hillary Clinton running tend to be the right-leaning media, right? Saying, oh, well, it's good for the Democrats, good for the Democrats. No. You guys want Hillary Clinton to run. Just admit it. But what about from the left-leaning media? From the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world, Do you think that they're doing what the Democrats are doing in many states where they prop up the most extremist candidates? As you know, Democrats are paying for ads to prop up the most extremist candidates so that they can beat them in the general election?
Well, you know, I think that MSNBC does suffer from the fact that there's an agreement and a kind of, I would say, you know, my students and Bernie Sanders would say that MSNBC is, you know, was very guilty of not giving him enough attention. And a lot of people felt that they were very much pro Hillary Clinton. And so, you know, I think that what's the problem, CNN, in my view, helped elect Donald Trump, Dan, by covering him nonstop before he really had any.
That's in 16. That's in 16. That's fair. In 16, there's no doubt about that. Yeah. But I'm talking now. And look, if your students are saying, you know, that they wish Bernie, I get it. They're further to the left than even MSNBC is. They're probably not to the left of some of the MSNBC folks, though. Anyway, I got to wrap this. Jane Hall, thank you so much for coming on the program. I appreciate it. I hope this wasn't as divisive as much of the cable news you've done throughout your career. That does it for us tonight. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.